What's up, everyone? This is Ben with Swift English. So now we're going to be discussing TOEFL Speaking Task 4, the long lecture. So just like Task 3, it does involve, some kind of lecture. Could be from a biology class, psychology class, business class, education class, whatever. But there are some key differences here. One of the most important ones is that they just throw you straight into the lecture, okay? You're gonna dive right into the lecture. So there is no reading section at all here. It's just a listening component. So that's the first thing you wanna know, and I'll explain the rest in detail here. So let's take a look. So imagine this transcript is what you're hearing during the exam. So here's one exercise. So of course, many animals live in groups with others of their species, and there are benefits to living together in groups. It can help them to survive, but there are certain disadvantages. So today we're going to talk about 2 disadvantages of living in groups for animals. Okay, so what usually happens in this specific speaking task is that while you're taking notes, you kind of want to imagine and break down your notes into 3 specific sections here. You're going to have your main topic section. That's going to refer to the beginning of the listening section. And then you're going to have your subtopic 1 section as well as your subtopic 2 section. Okay, so here, this kind of paragraph I've written down here. So this is just a transcript. On the actual exam, you're hearing this. So all this information is pertaining to your main topic section of your notes. So when you jot this information down, you're gonna have something like this going on. Now, don't worry about these lines. I'll explain that later today. So you can see I have like 4 lines of information. And what you'll also notice is they'll have this kind of transition statement because you hear it. So today we're going to talk about 2 disadvantages of living in groups for animals. Or they might say something like, so today we're going to be discussing 2 marketing strategies that business experts use to sell more products. Something like this. They have this most of the time, like 80-90% of the time. So when you hear this, they're letting you know they're about to jump into the subtopics, okay? So if you have like a pretty normal task 4, your layout will look something like this. So when you're hearing this, you're gonna have something kind of reminiscent to this. So one disadvantage is that, so when you hear the keywords first, firstly, first and foremost, first off, to begin with, write number 1 and whatever that statement was in a short way. So again, guys, when you take notes in general, just like you did with task 2 and 3, every line you write, keep it like 3 to 4 words at a time. In some cases, if you're really fast, some of your lines might be 4 or 5 words at a time. But you have to use reductions, symbols, abbreviations for that to happen. It's not easy, but try to have that habit of being concise, having a few words per line, 3 to 4 on average, usually. Again, content words, nouns, verbs, some adjectives, and adverbs too. So, okay. Now, what tends to happen here is they have this kind of initial explanation in the normal ones. So you'll hear them kind of explain how the subtopic works or what is its purpose or importance here. So if there's a big group of animals, predators are more likely to spot them than they would an individual animal on its own. So sometimes animals in groups will be more vulnerable to being captured by predators. So I'm not gonna actually write this information down. Why? Because they haven't introduced a specific example for me. And usually when they do introduce a specific example, it already comes with its own explanation. So it's kind of repetitive and redundant. And we don't want to kind of write the same thing twice. It's just a waste of time. And later on, when we want to prepare for our 1-minute response, there's no way we can summarize all this information because our goal is not to give them every single piece of detail here. We want to just summarize it, okay? Summarize those main points. So wait for them to introduce the example, and there'll be some magical keywords here, like for example, for instance. I don't think they'll use like, but they could if it's an informal speech. They could use to illustrate. I've seen that a number of times. and they could use similar structures like take X as an example, take X for instance, or imagine, let's say that, if you hear any of these words and they introduce a specific example, just write your EX, that's your symbol, and whatever that example is. And if it's a sentence, obviously try to get most of that sentence. And then what you want to do is jot down all the remaining details. So in this case, we just have one sentence here, but in some other ones, you might have 2 or 3, 4 more sentences to go. So just do your best to jot down most of them, whatever you can. All right, so far we have this, right? And we have this right here, okay? So now they moved on to subtopic 2. Another disadvantage has to do with caring for the young. Okay, so number 2, a problem, caring for the young. Got it. Or disadvantage, caring for the young. Now here again, when you're carefully listening, you notice they just have this initial explanation in a large group. There's a lot of young animals around, and it can be difficult for animals to find or identify their own young. And they may end up taking care of other animals' young instead. So their own young may not get the care they need. Okay, got it. So I didn't write anything down at that point because this is just an initial explanation without an example. But then later they explicitly tell me what the example is. For example, some bats live in caves. So EX, bats live caves. And again, you're going to write down the rest of the information. And just in general, like task 2 and 3, any conjunctions you encounter like and, but, so, because, any transition devices, like for example, therefore, in fact, whatever, right? Try to write those down, any time phrases. That'll help you organize your response later, specifically your notes to produce that response, okay? All right, so now let me actually annotate this for you guys. All right. So here, what I do is I need one intro sentence from my main topic section. So when you want to do this, well, first of all, you want to see what the question is asking you. So like in this case, using points and examples from the lecture, this is like a default direction. It's almost always there. Explain 2 disadvantages of living groups for animals. So here I just highlighted it for us. Okay, so you want to find that in your notes. There it is. So disadvantages of what? So animals that live or travel in groups. There you go. And all the other information, maybe I'll just change the color just briefly. Just ignore. Imagine it's not there. Just cross out. So that's what you want to do. And that'll leave you with your first sentence. So that's sentence 1. And I'll show you how to present that in a moment. And then you want to identify your subtopics during these 20 seconds. It's not a lot of time, so when you get used to it, it's just fast. Okay, subtopic 1, 2, here are the examples, and you want to find that final sentence wherever it is, because you want to play that mental math game again. You want 3 sentences for both these subtopics, subtopic 1 and subtopic 2. In some cases, you might have a 4th sentence in subtopic 2. In rare cases, you might end up with 4 sentences combined for subtopic 1. But at least you should have 3 and 3. Okay, so once you're done doing that, you're going to present this in 1 minute. So it sounds like this. I'm going to apply the template. So there are 2 disadvantages of animals that live in groups. First of all, animals that live in groups are more visible to predators. To illustrate, sardines are small fish that swim in groups, and other large ocean animals like whales eat them. So while a whale may not notice one single sardine, it could still see a group of them and easily capture them for food. Okay, so another problem when it comes to animals that travel in groups is caring for their young. To exemplify, some bats live in caves, and with one type of bat, there are millions of them together in the same cave. And with young bats crowded together in the cave, sometimes it's hard for the mother bat to find her babies. So when the mother bat returns from finding food to feed her babies, of course, she might end up feeding the baby bats of another bat. And these are two downsides of animals that live or move in groups. So that's the gist of it, guys. So the conclusion's optional. You don't have to have that, and most people just run out of time. They don't get there. But the other 7 sentences you need. So if I just show you what an ideal response looks like, you have there are. So you could say the lecture is about, but this is just a faster way to cut to the chase. Because a lot of students slow down in that intro sentence where they're introducing the main topic, and that messes them up. They might not be able to finish subtopic 2 on time. So you want that quick intro. Like, there are 2 disadvantages of living groups for animals. Then here you introduce that first subtopic. First of all, animals that live in groups are more visible to predators. Now here you want an example phrase. I tried to use something different this time around to exemplify or to illustrate. So these are less commonly used. It'll make you a little bit more competitive in the exam. But if you want to use for example or for instance, feel free. Those are excellent as well. So here we talk a little bit about the example, and then we should at least have one more sentence to wrap up the point. So, whereas a whale can't see a single sardine, it can easily see a group and capture them for food. In a lot of cases, they kind of have like this so sentence, this kind of result sentence, this consequence sentence, but not always. In some other ones, you might have like a and. They're just adding related information like and, likewise, similarly. Or sometimes they might have a contrast marker like but or although or something. A sentence that involves those, or like an if sentence. So it really just depends what's presented in the listing. So whatever that information is, you're just gonna mention that sentence, that detail. Now here, you could say another disadvantage of animals that live in groups, or you could paraphrase it if you want. You don't have to be that picky like me, but if you do want to paraphrase, go for it, up to you. So you say this, then here your example of it, right? So your example phrase, to illustrate, when there are millions of bats living together in the same cave, it becomes really difficult for the mother bat to blah, blah, blah. Now, again, you have one more detail left. So here we have this so with the when sentence combination. So that's the final detail there. And if you still have time, you could have that optional conclusion at the end. You're just reiterating, restating, repeating that first sentence, that intro sentence. So these are 2 drawbacks of animals living groups, right? Okay, so let's take a look at 2 more examples. I'll try to be a little faster here because I know it's a little repetitive. All right, so again, imagine this is the lecture. Of course, I kind of have written down the transcript for you guys. Okay, so here we could see, we could hear basically protective adaptations is the main topic. Now, if you get really good at this, what a lot of my own students do is they don't write all the sentences from the main topic. They kind of find it burdensome. So instead, they're just patient. They just try to identify what the main topic is, and then they just write that down, and then they spend most of their time focusing on the subtopic section. So up to you. If you're a poor listener though, I recommend just writing whatever you can from the main topic section, these sentences first, and then later on, you could always just cross out the information that you don't need. It's just my common tip here. Anyway, so, and other animals have, so in this case, guys, this is a weird one. This is why I picked this specific exercise. So here, they're introducing the concept of protective adaptations, and then they say there are 2 kinds. Now, logically, your mind expects you that they'll just start introducing you to subtopic 1 and explain how that works, exemplify it by providing you with an example, and then finishing off the final details there before moving on to subtopic 2. But here they didn't do that. They tried to trick you. So what they did was they mentioned subtopic 1 here and what it does, or what its purpose or function or importance is, and then straight away they actually dived into subtopic 2 introduction right here. And then to really fool you, or try to fool you, they just jumped to subtopic 1 example. And from there, they just explain how that example works, and that's it. And then they follow it up with by introducing subtopic 2 example, and they explain this in detail, and that's it. So again, guys, when you set up your notes, when you realize the moment they're introducing a subtopic like this one here, you have to come to the left side of your paper or whiteboard and write it down. And then if they jump like directly into subtopic 2, you're not going to write that underneath that. You know, that's not like an example sentence or anything. You have to be cautious, focused, and vigilant to write this on the right side of your computer paper or your whiteboard, okay? So don't mess up your labels. And then, yeah, if they do jump into the example, like here, they didn't have like this spiel, this initial explanation, that's okay. Just put EX turtle. And then whatever they have here, you want to try your best to write down, okay? Because all this is related to the turtle. And you don't want to miss a lot of information here. That'll be really bad. And so once they proceed by introducing the porcupine as the next example, write it, you know, EX porcupine. And try to get as much of these details as possible. And then later on, if we have to remove something, or if you did like notice maybe when they're explaining the porcupine or turtle, they kind of repeat themselves somewhere. If there are repetitive sentences you encounter, those you could skip, you know, when you're listening to them. But if the information all sounds mostly new and the details are quite different from one another, just try your best to write down most of them. And then later on, we'll figure out what to do with them, okay? So in this case, all right, so here's the question. Using points and examples from the lecture, explain 2 different protective adaptations. So right away, you want to find protective adaptations in your notes. So I'm going to annotate really quick. So here it is. Like, what do they do, right? Always have that detail as well. This is why I recommend, you know, writing this stuff. So, okay, there we go. And the other information, you know, just ignore it. Just cross it out so it doesn't distract you. So again, that's sentence 1. Then again, subtopic 1, okay, that's my example, and this seems to be the last sentence, done. And again, subtopic 2, the example, and that should be the last sentence there. So, you know, you want to be able to do this fast. So maybe in the beginning, if you're not used to it, you could add like little lines here. Okay, this is for my second one, and this is for my third one. And again, here, all this goes together and all this goes together. But when you really get good at this, you just want to identify this, right? And okay, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And that's it. But if there's like information you have to cross out, you know, just cross it out. If something's repetitive in there, like cross it out. Anyway, so I'm going to present this. There are 2 kinds of protective adaptations that animals have developed in order to survive. First of all, some animals have defensive adaptations. So they have body structures that make it hard for predators to get them, to attack them. To exemplify the turtle, it has a hard shell with a special physical characteristic, and it's so strong that, you know, predators cannot break open this shell, making it very hard for them to really get the turtle. And also, you know, turtles have a flexible neck. They can pull their heads down into their shells, and their legs can also fold down underneath the shells for more protection. On the other hand, there are some animals that have offensive adaptations, which are body structures that keep predators away from them. For instance, the porcupine. So this is an animal that protects itself with offensive adaptation by threatening predators with physical harm. These quills are its special physical characteristics. So whenever a predator approaches the porcupine and comes near, these sharp quills come loose and, you know, go inside the predator's skin. So the predators know to stay away, because when they see the porcupine's sharp quills, they know they could get hurt, and they don't want that. So these are 2 types of protective adaptations that animals use to survive, you know, something like that. All right, so like I showed you here, practice doing this slowly. Who cares if you go over the minute? Just focus on getting it right. Then when you get used to it, then turn on your timer, your 1-minute timer, and try to get this information within that 1 minute, okay? So not counting the conclusion, it'll be 7 sentences. But if you did get the optional conclusion, somewhere around 8 sentences. And something you should know just in general about task 4, anytime they kind of repeat like a noun, like if they did repeat turtle again, you could put like a capital T the next time. Or porcupine, you could put like P-O-R or just a capital P. Or if there's like some nouns that they're repeating a lot, so like quills, maybe the next time around just put like QS, okay? So that way you don't get too tired when you're taking down notes and you don't fall behind your notes either. So really important. Okay. So you could see this is the entire response right here. So this is just an ideal response with the templates again. Here, this time around, I use also. I made it a little bit different, but you could, use the same ones if you want. Up to you. So let's take a look at another example. This is our final example. All right, so here we see the topic is about display behaviors, and what it does is it helps animals maintain their group's unity. And then here, so this part is pretty normal. One way is through the use of threatening display behaviors. All right, so clearly this is subtopic 1. You want to make sure you write this down. And here they kind of mention the function of that or the purpose, the importance of it. And I usually, write it underneath. So threatening display behaviors are used to communicate a warning. There you go. And then here they kind of have like this initial explanation about it, like how it works. But again, it's vague, pretty broad. It doesn't mention like a specific animal or it's like some kind of specific example here. So I didn't write it down. But this moment when you hear magical words like, for instance, to illustrate, imagine, baboons, EX, write the noun, baboons, right? So that's your subtopic example. And then all the details that follow, you're gonna be jotting down as well. You do the same thing again. So here, we could see like sometimes they don't use words like also, additionally, in addition, furthermore, moreover. So instead of like kind of using an adding transition word to introduce the second subtopic, sometimes they just use a contrast attack. So they'll use but or on the other hand or in contrast, words like this. And you still want to write that down because that's about subtopic 2. Don't let it confuse you. So number 2, whatever this phrase is in a short way. Now here, this is an example of what I was talking about. So if you understand the phrasal verb make up, right? It means to kind of compensate, to fix a problem. Well, you don't have to write this sentence here because it's kind of the same thing, okay? It's kind of like reconciling to make up. So in those cases, sometimes you can be selective. Now here they introduced the second subtopic. In these cases, an animal might use friendly display behavior. Well, there you go. That's subtopic 2. Okay, so from here to here, they're discussing subtopic 2. And then here, they just jump to the example. So you have to write EX baboon. Now, since this time around, this is a unique situation, and this can happen to you, sometimes what they'll do is in the second example, it'll actually be the same one they used in the first example, but they have a different phenomenon here, okay? They have this different subtopic or strategy or whatever it is that's happening. So in this case, you could write EX baboon again, or you could write like EX and then like 2 quotations so that that it's referring to that first example again. But this time they have a different situation involving it. So up to you. And then again, you want to write these details until you're done. So let's come to our notes. So again, you annotated, so you got the point. I need display behaviors, and this is what it does. It sends messages to other animals and helps maintain group unity. The rest of the information from the main topic section I'll cross out. And again, here's my subtopic 1. So it's there. There's my example. It's kind of mentioned twice there. That's okay. And this because sentence is my last sentence. So just be aware of that. Again, subtopic 2 intro. The example for subtopic 2, again, it's about baboons, right? So I have that quotation. So I know like to say this special phrase, which I'll show you in just a moment. And then here I have my last sentence, which was a so sentence this time around. So when I present it, again, it sounds something kind of like this. So there are display behaviors that animals use to send messages to other animals and help maintain group unity. First of all, one way they do that is by using threatening display behavior, which is used to communicate a warning. Baboons, for example, use threatening display behavior. Like, say, two baboons find a fruit and both of them want it. And one baboon, maybe the first one to actually see the fruit, may stare at the other baboon, and make threatening noises to let the other baboon know that, hey, it wants the fruit. Because the other baboon understands the meaning of the stares and grunts, it will give up without fighting. All right, it'll give up the fruit, of course, without fighting. Now you come here. So in this case, guys, since it's a bit of a contrast because I have that but there, I remember to write that, you could do it this way. But sometimes physical fights do occur, they do happen, and animals need a way to resolve it. So they may consider using friendly display behavior. Take the baboons as an example again. Say the two baboons are fighting over the fruit. After the conflict, the two animals need to resolve the problem. So they may approach each other making friendly noises and hug each other to show or indicate that everything is fine again. So these are two ways that animals may send messages to other animals and maintain their group's unity. Done. So that was a conclusion at the end. So again, this is the question here. Now, even if they mention like an example here, don't let it bother you. Again, you're focusing on the part that starts with explain something something. Okay, that's where the question is really aiming at. And again, if you do this right, you're gonna have this there are as your intro template. Introduce the main topic and what it does or what its importance is. Once again, you want to have your reason discourse marker right there, first of all. And then you want to get into your example. So here you can say, imagine there are two baboons. For example, two baboons. You want to say something like this, then explain it. Now, in this case, since it was a unique situation, whatever you have in your notes there, you can introduce subtopic 2 by using that but on the other hand, whatever that contrast marker was. So this is kind of like a tricky situation. And then when they repeat the same example again, just say, let's look at the baboon example again, or like, let's take baboons as an example again. You're gonna use a phrase like this, and then, finish off the rest of the explanation. And, if you still have time, you could just add a conclusion at the end. And these are two great examples of, how animals maintain group unity or whatever you want to do here. And that's it. So I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys in the next one.